Madrid summit is going to happen in several weeks, and although it was scheduled much earlier, the agenda is subject to the recent events. And I'm not talking only about war in Ukraine, but also something that was unthinkable just a couple of months ago, and that is two neutral countries aspiring to join NATO. Is timeline sufficient to have accession treaties signed for Sweden and Finland in Madrid?
As you well know, we do have one member of the alliance that has come forward and expressed some concerns with the request by both Sweden and Finland to join the alliance. We are currently looking for ways to address those concerns. Fortunately, the alliance has a long history of dealing with situations just like this, where one ally comes to the table and has a concern or an issue that they want to raise. And so we're hopeful that we will be able to resolve this, that we will get through it, and that ultimately Finland and Sweden will join this alliance sometime this year. As for the question on the Madrid summit, we'll see how talks that are ongoing proceed. And the hope is perhaps if things go as planned, they might be able to join us at the Madrid summit as invitees. But we'll take it week by week and see how the discussions unfold.
Speaking about one ally, it has somehow become a bilateral issue between US and Turkey. Can you unblock this from now until end of June?
Well, we don't have the impression that this is just a bilateral issue. What has happened is Turkey came into the NATO alliance a couple of days ago, over a week ago now, and expressed some specific concerns with both candidate countries, both Sweden and Finland. And what we're doing is we're encouraging the Turks to work closely with those two countries and work to resolve those issues among the three of them so that we can proceed with accession talks.
But you're avoiding the answer to the question, is US working with Turkey in order to make the accession or at least invitation possible?
Well, all allies here at NATO are consulting both with Sweden and Finland and with Turkey, trying to understand how collectively we can address the concerns. There have been some higher level calls made by US officials. Also, the Turkish foreign minister happened to be in Washington recently, and he had a chance to sit down and meet with Secretary Blinken in New York around the margins of a conference on food security.
Despite that there is a certain cautious optimism that things can turn in the right direction and there can be an invitation for two countries, thus enlargement of NATO will happen. Ironically, Putin is contributing directly with his actions in Ukraine to NATO enlargement, while his aim was to prevent it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. President Putin had a number of objectives in recent months. Number one, he wanted to go into Kyiv and take over Ukraine within days. He wanted to divide the West and make sure that we couldn't stand united and apply pressure on Moscow to stop this war. And he certainly didn't want to see the NATO alliance add any new members or see NATO members move their forces and force posture into Eastern Europe. And in fact, those things have occurred. We've seen NATO now receive the applications from Sweden and Finland. We've seen allies move force posture into Eastern Europe. Russia has not succeeded in taking Kyiv or even all of Ukraine for that matter. And he has not succeeded in dividing the West.
However, there are allies that are not comfortable with the whole world is not comfortable, but I'm talking about NATO members that are under direct threat from Russia, and not only Baltic states. Western Balkans and members of Western Balkans that are in NATO are a perfect field for a possible Russia action in the future. Is NATO undertaking any action in order to prevent any possible impact of Russia's aggression in Western Balkans among allies, and I'm talking Montenegro and North Macedonia?
Well, what the alliance did in the weeks leading up to February 24th, when Russia went into Ukraine, was to sit down with all members, including some of the newest members like North Macedonia and Montenegro, to understand what, if anything, they were seeking to address their security needs in the moment. And then once Russia went into Ukraine, those conversations continued. We all know the Russian playbook here. We know that in addition to the war in Ukraine with conventional military forces, the Russians like to rely on things like cyber attacks or disinformation campaigns to see if they can fuel instability or divide us from within. We've kept a close watch on those types of tactics in recent weeks and months, and the alliance is responding. We have had close conversations with all of our allies, but also many of our partners, to address the types of tactics that either countries believe that they're seeing in the moment or anticipate seeing in the future.
Going back to the Madrid summit, among many burning issues that you will discuss, leaders will have time also to discuss Western Balkans, notably Bosnia and Herzegovina. Can you reveal what specifically will be focus of the discussion about this country?
Well, I don't have any breaking news specifically about Bosnia. What I can say about Bosnia is that it is a close partner to this NATO alliance. Bosnia has had a relationship with NATO for quite some time. We continue to look for ways to strengthen that relationship between Bosnia and NATO, and we'll have to see about future efforts that can be undertaken either at Madrid or elsewhere to continue to expand and strengthen that relationship.
In the light of Ukrainian war, is there a need in NATO? For sure, there is a need in the region, but in NATO to have like closer ties with other Western Balkan countries that are not members of NATO, and I'm specifically talking about advancing membership action plan with Bosnia and Herzegovina at the other side, but also offering something to Kosovo as well. Kosovo has expressed the willingness to participate in Partnership for Peace. However, we have 4 non-recognizers that might prevent it. Is there any way to find a political decision to bring Kosovo closer to NATO structures or NATO programs?
Let me just speak from a U.S. point of view. The United States supports Kosovo integrating into Euro or Euro-Atlantic organizations and institutions. We believe countries should have the right to determine their own associations and memberships. We certainly would support Kosovo moving towards the Partnership for Peace program, but you are right to point out that everything that happens here in the NATO alliance happens through consensus. There is no qualified majority voting. Everything here is decided at 30 is the expression we use, where all 30 nations have to agree on it. So this will be a decision that will have to be taken by consensus should Kosovo decide to try and move towards Partnership for Peace.
But is U.S. working at least with 4 non-recognizers to try to convince them that this is for the sake of the peace and stability of the region rather than a political issue that would undermine their political stance towards Kosovo status? Is this possible to happen?
Well, look, I think what I can say is what's happening here at the NATO alliance is that we all are concerned about peace and stability in the Western Balkans, and collectively we want to work towards that goal. So again, the U.S. will support Kosovo in its determination and drive to become a member of Partnership for Peace.
To go back to the war in Ukraine, NATO enlargement, and 24th of February happened because of Membership Action Plan for Ukraine. Is it off the table completely now, in the light of what is happening in the country?
No, I think what's been very, very clear from not only February 24th on, but even before Russia went into Ukraine, is that the message coming from Brussels here at NATO headquarters has been that NATO's door will remain wide open. We had a very lengthy NATO-Russia Council here at NATO on January 12th, where Russians sat at the table and actually asked whether or not NATO would reconsider its open door policy. The message was crystal clear in that meeting, and so the door will remain open. We will first focus on ending the war in Ukraine. That is the top priority at the moment. But we believe Ukraine still has the right to determine whether or not at some point it wants to join NATO. We will leave that in the hands of President Zelensky. But here at the NATO alliance, we've been very clear in our messaging that no one is closing NATO's open door.
Madam Ambassador, thank you very much for this interview.
Thank you.